Alright, finally I got to doing this. I have a lot to finish for September, and hopefully I'll be able to. Now, I had my first part, obviously, and you can get all the introductions from there, so I don't want to, waste any time getting to this, so let's all finish this all off and get on into the first member for this list. Korutopi, or Korutopi, no, I Korutopi mostly. I don't think anyone would be that surprised that I don't have much to say on his character. All that I was able to get from him is that he was one of the more quieter types and that he had an interesting net ability. For having a net ability, though, circulating around copying that can tell you a bit about Korutopi actually, I have a headcanon idea that he's actually just a full-on follower of Crollo because of the similarities of copying in their abilities. It's either that Korutopi found Crollo and developed his own ability off of experiences of being with the troupe, which really wouldn't make sense because if you want to join the troupe, you would have to have something notable about yourself, or had some sort of issue of not having as much or just being alone in general, which led to the creation of that ability in specific, or he was just he created it off nothing. At least with that, I'm able to base something off of Korutopi, not my headcanon, but his ability. That's a good thing to actually take note on for both Nen and honestly other areas in fiction. Example, stands are a pretty good one. If you can't make up your thoughts on the user, it's better to think about the abilities. If you like the abilities, you'll probably be able to have more to think about it, but if you don't, I would still attempt to look into them because these abilities are way more personal than you would expect. The next troupe member is Bono Ndongo, and before talking about his character, I'd actually like to address Togashi's writing on his character and foreign customs in general. With Bono's characterization and background, you can already see a large amount of culture influence with what a lot of his character is out and how he came to be. The piercing was one thing because it's already a large thing that people do take notice for in certain Eastern cultures, but what got me is the beliefs and reasoning behind the piercings. Along with family, religion is an enormous factor into what makes up a lot of cultures and how they come out to be. Togashi's awareness with both of those things show the large awareness as not only a person but a mangaka being able to incorporate it into his manga. It's honestly just a whole thing of its own. You can see the powerful attributes of what family does when it comes to people like the Zoldics or even the troupe, but when it comes to, culture, if that's what you want to generalize it into, characters like Bono or even Netero give you a well enough example of that. Now, on Bono in specific, I love seeing him being one of the more sensible members of the group. He holds himself in higher regard than to fall to simple things like wrath and rage. I also have never seen him do something unless it was completely necessary to him, and even then he just doesn't go all out and just lose his mind completely. I also love that even with him not being from Meteor City, he still has a home that he holds pride in and cares about massively. It wouldn't be too crazy to say that's where his power comes from too, because, well, it full on technically did. His battle cantabile, that's the best way how you say it, is amazing, and I'm wondering if the Jupiter thing he has going on and the sun thing that Phaeton had going on with him is meant to connect. Is that just a common thing? Are we going to see more type of planetary space things that happen with the troupe? I'm just saying that. I think that's all I really have to say for him for now. But, one thing about Jupiter, though, I like to interpret it as this is the amount of pride he holds for his people. It's as big as Jupiter, in quotes. The next troupe member being Shizuku Murasaki. And look, alright, one of the laws of being a human is that everyone is allowed at least one fictional character that they low-key, high-key love. Shizuku is that for me, meaning that if you do want to make art on Shizuku or link any art that already exists, and by link I mean you have to provide the artist with it because I'm just not going to take it, obviously, if you just uncredited it, then I'm completely down for it. My Twitter is Caleb_IA, so hit me up for that. But on for my reasoning, obviously it just goes past appearance. Shizuku's character design has her being this extremely cute character who looks like she should be a nice person for the most part. With the arm wrestle between her and Gon, you can also see that she's reasonably respectable for what had happened. But it turns out she's actually just not one to get upset. I've never seen Shizuku lose composure, but that's because she really has no composure to maintain at all. She's intelligent, but this intelligence lacks any real sense of morality. Not to go in depth on manga spoilers, but there is this example for those that do know. That one thing is probably the best one. Something that she shouldn't be saying at all, and it's on something that she should at least remotely care about, but goes ahead and basically tells a joke about what had happened. She doesn't show any emotion to anyone really, be a fight, regular interactions with fellow members, or even a fortune that tells her about her inevitable end. And I can see that not being a big thing with the troupe though, because I'm sure that they all know that it will happen one day, and they could try to challenge the fortune because they're pretty strong Nen users. So I would see no real reason for anyone to be losing their head over it. You can say that with about maybe 2 or 3 of the members that actually did. Aside from that, she doesn't have the best memory, or well, being honest, it's just pretty bad. That's also another large reason that I like her, because I can honestly just relate with how bad my memory normally is. It's aside from all the videos and stuff like that. If you meet me in person, I'm just generally just terrible with memory altogether, and I think that's it for me. The next member is Pakunoda, or Pakunoda, depending on how you approach it. I know through all of this I've avoided calling the troupe evil, and I have yet to see a member as inherently evil too, but Pakunoda is a level of messed up that is probably normal to the troupe but crazy to me. The 2 things that I will always remember her for is her loyalty to the troupe and what she did to Squala, and I think about what happened with Squala more than the loyalty, to be honest with you. She wanted to hear the truth come from Squala's mouth, and even though she got all the information that she needed from him with her abilities, with the whole trade between the two, he wasn't willing to do so. But she still wanted to hear the truth come from him. She already got what she needed. She also knew that she would be able to make him snap, and if he did snap, then Nobunaga would kill him, and well, that's exactly what happened. She had mentally played with him in every way possible, and didn't have to be the one to kill him because she was above the whole situation. I'm with Killua when talking about her. Her abilities are extremely terrifying and don't really have to have anything to do with lethality to be this scary. But on her loyalty to the troupe, which is probably the most notable thing that most people will see about her, while I do think it is loyalty that binds her to her actions, but what she did was actually just the best possible thing for the spider. She just thinks that well. It's just that she had to go against what was set out in priorities to do what was best for it. So she could have left Chrollo to die, but with him being such an important thing for the spider, it was her call not to do it. And I don't think I actually have anything else to say on her, aside from how much I credit her for her all-around intelligence. So we're gonna go on to the next member. The next character is supposed to be Cal-Zoldak, or Cal-Zoldak, depending on how you say it. But I want to save him for my Zoldak video, so all that I'll say here is that I love his Nen ability. On Phaeton Portor, I don't know what to exactly approach first. There's his design, his sadism, or anything else really. Well, let me talk about him being in the troupe. I had seen some talk that Phaeton didn't exactly do that much in the York New arc, but I think he was able to establish some of what the troupe's history was like or what they're about. That's before us looking on into the troupe's past later on into the arc. And then there was what he said along with Franklin talking about who they are, stating that they just get what they want when they want it. And then there was when one of the last men alive, after the huge wipeout that the troupe did, he was trying to threaten the troupe for wiping out everyone and trying to threaten them with stuff like, we'll take out everyone you love, we'll find who you are, we'll take out your family, and all of that. But then it ends after Phaeton ends him and says, family, well, what's that? That's something I always question when on the dynamic of the spider, because they pick up family-like attributes with some of the relationships from the characters, a few of which I mentioned in my previous video about the troops, and even with those attributes, the spider isn't exactly a family even then. With far enough history, certain things will have an extremely harder effect on the group, like the death of Uogen. Though when we hear about number 4 and number 8 dying, we don't even get a remote mention by name. It makes you think a lot with what Phaeton gives us, but more on him. You don't really see the worst of him until he's mad beyond belief. And at that point, everyone can see it and feel it. The ones in the show more than us, at least, because he actually almost killed some of the troop, or all of the troop, with his pain packer. With that anger, you see the more vocal area of his sadism instead of how he just usually quietly manages it, being the interrogator for the troop and all. He's also one to hate when it looks like the enemy of any kind looks like they're getting ahead of themselves. But even with that, he's an extremely prideful and wrathful man when it comes to returning the favor for those same enemies. I also love his design because of this. Well, how am I supposed to describe his fit? It's dark, gothic, spooky. I feel like all those descriptions are wrong, but I just find his fit just cool all around. He's well designed in my opinion. And finally, the head of the spider, Crollo Lucifer. I think I can only go off the general thoughts I have for Crollo because he's one of those layered characters to where there's legitimately so much that can't be condensed as fast. One of the large reasons that I love Crollo is because every time that I do come back to Hunter to look for things about him or anything relating to the spider, I'll find something that I originally didn't see. That's usually due to further understanding, growth, and all of that, but I love seeing it in him specifically. A huge reason why I go back to a lot of what I've enjoyed in the past and do a double take or even a few more to see what else I possibly left out is because of him. I think what solidified my interest in his character and gave me the motivation to go back with all the stuff that I do go back with was his interaction with Gon.
改めて問われると答えがたいものだな。動機の言語化かあまり好きじゃないしな。しかし案外、いや、やはりと言うべきか。自分をつかむ鍵はそこにあるか。
That scene alone had asked so many questions to me and added on this general aura to Crollo, this aura being as dark and mysterious as possible. Who really is Crollo? We're obviously not going to get the most information from him anytime soon, but I don't think it's required, at least for me. I may ask who he is, but the question is rhetorical, if anything. I think a lot of villains that have lived throughout a movie or anime, that have lived and died with no past being shown to us, and I like them a lot better for not knowing any of that. Along with that, characters most likely give you all the information you need to make out an idea of who they are without actually giving up any background information. Crollo does exactly that, and the most general idea of who he is goes back to what I had mentioned, the spider. Now, aside from his character, I love his design. Togachi's ability to create dark characters, I guess that's the best way to put it, like Crollo and Phaeton, is something I love seeing because there's not too much being done with these characters, but the designs are definitely near complex. Crollo isn't done over the top with his design like how some villains I have in mind, and with all how gashed up some of them are usually made out to be, though all of that I'm just going to put that to the side, and I think that's honestly it for now for Crollo's case, because if I was to go about Crollo just pinpointing each thing that I want, I would just be consistently talking about different stuff. So it's better that I just give my general thoughts on characters with videos like this. So possible Hunter characters, Hunter analysis videos in the future, which will be way better for that, and I'll be able to get more out than what I can right now.
Kumo-san.
Thank you all for watching. If you've realized, if you're a sub and you noticed that there's I haven't been uploading as fast, I've came down with a little sickness, and no, it's not my easy way to say that I've been playing Spider-Man, because I have been playing Spider-Man, but I'm also sick on the side of that too. So there's that, but I will be uploading more because I do want to make September this one where I just answer all the part 2s that I haven't previously. The Explosive Users Tournament is coming back, and I have a lot of I don't know what to call it directly. It's stand-up or pierced. I'm calling it ultimate characters just to make it easier, just so people get a general idea for it. So that'll be there in the near future. So thank you guys all for watching again. I'll see you all in the next one. Comment for what you want to see next. I'm probably going to do the Akatsuki video if anything. I'll see you all in the next one. Sorry. Until then, peace out and Godspeed.